Welcome to Top Tier Wrestling, your ultimate destination for all things AEW and WWE. Whether you're a hardcore wrestling fanatic or just a casual viewer, we've got you covered with the latest news, in depth show reviews, and our unfiltered opinions on everything happening in the world of professional wrestling. Join us as we dive into the high octane action, dramatic storylines, and backstage buzz of AEW and WWE. Get ready to step into the ring with us and stay on top of the wrestling world. This is Top Tier Wrestling. It's Monday night, and you know what that means. The Top Tier Wrestling Podcast is coming to you live from the At Home Arena. I'm the one and only Doniosis, and with me is the Dapper Yapper, Daddy Magic Janard. It's only fitting that we're here to cover Monday Night Raw for 11/18, and I don't mind letting you guys on a little spoiler. It did not suck. So I got just one more thing to ask you. Isn't that just feel so right? Let's get into it.
Isn't that just feels so right?
Isn't
Man,
it?
Joe Tessitore will never live that down, ever.
Not ever. Not as long as I breathe.
Not as long as you breathe.
As long as I breathe, never.
However, him having a funny thing to say was nowhere near as terrible as the fact that we opened tonight with Liv Morgan making her way to the ring going, "Watch me."
Oh, that's right. I'd almost forgotten.
I know.
Yeah. Well,
although
listen.
she wore the tiniest pants that a human being I think can legally wear.
Yeah, I don't know what to say about it. I don't know what to say about it. I mean, she's well within her right to wear whatever she'd like, right? And besides, I mean, women have come out in bikinis, and it's really not that different. She just has like a bikini bottom that looks like jeans, So
True.
that's how I have to look at it, or else the mom in me will go, call your mother, put a sweater on, it would. I gotta. That's the way I have to do it. But guys, fret not, because even though Liv Morgan came out and she was with Raquel Rodriguez, it didn't suck for long. But she welcomed everyone to Monday Night Morgan, and the audience booed, but she was like, "I know, I love that for you guys," which I found hilarious. But she got
it's
straight
like
to the
she's
point.
here.
Yeah, right. You know how I do. Anyway, but then she got straight to the point because she knows that Jade and Bianca are there and that they want to pick a fight. And she called herself the woman's the greatest women's world champion of all time. Which I'm sorry, I almost threw up a little when I said that. Woo. Anyway, she said, I also know that you guys didn't come alone, so neither did we. And in walks Nia Jax, looking cool,
Rocking the leather pants.
Man, I knew you were gonna go there. Yeah, she was rocking them leather pants. Anyway, she comes out and she's got the poison pixie, whatever her name is, and Tiffany, the important one.
Yep. Yeah, was it Candice LeRae, right?
Yeah, Candice LeRae. So anyway, Candice LeRae, and again, the important one, Tiffany. They came out with Nia, and she got. This was a segment of getting to the fucking point, because she got right to the point and addressed Raquel first and let her know that she didn't like her, but she also didn't dislike her. She just let her know that the champ doesn't think of her at all, which I thought funny because she had to think of her to tell her that, but.
True.
That's how recall works, but whatever. And then she looks at Liv Morgan and literally does the same thing. And of course Liv has to say her rebuttals back so that people know that she's like whatever, little bubblehead. Anyway, Bianca Belair comes out because Nia says, "Now Jade, Bianca, and Naomi, I can't stop thinking about you. You're all that I think about." And I'm thinking, oh my god, how romantical.
I could
But
believe
then,
that.
right, I'm like, I don't blame you, girl. I think about all three of those ladies as well. Um, I mean, I can spend all day on cakes alone. But anyway, I digressify. So then she said, like, so she says her bit, and then Bianca comes out. And she's like, "Nah, if you want to do something, then do it," But there's one thing that she was right about. They did not come alone. So then, uh, um, Io comes out, and Liv acknowledges that Io is there. And they all get into the ring by this time. Like, um, Bianca and Jade and Io and Cakes, Naomi, get into the ring by this point, and Liv basically calls them an idiot because there are 5 of them up there, but only 4 of the 4 of Bianca's team,
Or of the
and
opposition.
right, and then Rhea Ripley's music cuts because it cuts on
Oh
because
shit!
at this point Liv's like I know what's about to happen right now, so who wants to be brave enough and throw the first punch? Of course she's not gonna do it, right? But nobody threw the first punch because Rhea Ripley came out wearing her protective face mask that she borrowed from Cody, and she gets into the ring. If you know, you know. Okay, if you know, you know. And then she gets into the ring, and all she says is "War Games." Then headbutts Morgan, and then it goes down, and there are heels flying in the air, ponytails are whipping, leather pants are worn. It's a big to do. Um, Oh, Io wiped everybody out with an over the knee moonsault. Outside when the ladies are outside on
Mm-hmm.
the apron there. Let's see. Oh, basically it ends with the Team Rhea standing tall in the ring, looking like a bunch of caked up, sexy vixens, and
Yeah,
I was here for it.
this is very close to like a women's dream team right here. Rhea
Yeah,
Ripley, Bianca Belair, Naomi, Jade Cargill, and Io Sky. Whew.
yeah, great. So I'm excited about that. War Games is going to be a fucking blast.
Seriously, I was pretty happy with the way this was shaping up, but I legitimately was surprised to see Rhea Ripley come out. I thought like with her orbital bone, she was going to be out for a minute.
Yeah, and I thought I
And
thought it. I mean, this is a legit injury, right? Or was it kayfabe?
at this point, I can't say for sure. I'm beginning to think it might be kayfabe, but I can't confirm that 100% anywhere.
Yeah,
Um, but either way, I mean, if we're gonna get Rhea on this team for War Games, oh man, the
yeah. Let's
women's
go.
War
Right?
Games is gonna be legit.
Yep, yep,
And
yep.
here's the other thing that I think is cool. Unless I'm mistaken, historically the women's War Games match has been a 4-on-4. So maybe I'm wrong, but this might be the first time they're doing a 5-on-5, same as the guys. So
I
that's
actually
pretty
couldn't.
cool.
Yeah, I couldn't tell you. But I mean, if that's the case, then yeah, that's really awesome. And
Well,
I couldn't be happier for the ladies.
I'm here for it. Yeah, let's
Yeah.
go.
Yep, yep, yep. After that, we got a video recap that I thought was pretty awesome of Bronson Reed attacking Roman Reigns on last week's SmackDown. Which I mean, normally I'm like,
Hmm.
oh, with the recaps, but I don't know. I like that recap. It was fun. It was fun. I was here for it. It was filmed very well. And if I don't stop saying I'm here for it, brr.
I'm here for it. I'm here for you saying I'm here for it. Um, no, just to sort of continue with Big Bronson Reed's theme, man knows how to make some waves. Um, and I thought, and I think I said this on SmackDown, I thought they were going to introduce like Hikuleo and Zilla Fatu, but in my wildest dreams, did I not imagine that we would end up with Big Bronson Reed? And I think it's going to be a heck of a War Games. Now
Yeah.
the big question is, who will they get for Team OG?
Yeah. I mean, we all know the obvious, right? The obvious answer.
Well, we'll have to find out as we proceed through this episode.
Yeah.
Speaking of which, that brings us to our first match, which was really kind of a surprise. Like we had Rey Mysterio coming out with Zelina Vega, and I was like, oh, okay, who are they wrestling? And then the announcer was like, we have a mixed tag match, and I'm like, what? They don't do those too often.
They do
And
not. No.
so then I was like, well, who are they going to have? And it's Chad Gable with Ivy Nile. And suddenly I got like really kind of excited about this because I'm like, oh, they don't hardly ever do a mixed tag match. And
Yeah.
it makes me wonder if they're trying to make, more use of their catalog of different match types and the possibility of perhaps introducing some more different types of championships, like a mixed tag championship, maybe some more for the women, things like that. But I might be getting ahead of myself. Maybe they were just like, yeah, let's do this one. But at any rate,
I don't know. Whatever the case, yeah, and it turned out to be a banger. It turned out to be a really good match.
Yeah, everybody in this match really was bringing it. Zelina Vega, who sometimes is kind of the weak point, actually looked really good in there with Ivy Nile.
She did, yeah.
I mean, this was a solid match. Rey Mysterio looked very solid. I know he's the GOAT, but there are some evenings he's got an off night. This was not one of them. Him and Chad Gable were really bringing it. Yeah. Let's see, what were some of the high spots? There was a really cool spot where I want to say, I think Ivy Nile walked over and smacked Zelina Vega, which prompted the ref to, for whatever reason, they always mess with the wrestler who's trying to respond to having been slapped instead of the wrestler who did the slapping. But what it resulted in was both Ivy Nile and Chad Gable kicking the life out of Rey Mysterio in the corner. And I was like, okay, that's kind of cool because like both of them were getting in on it, right?
Yeah.
And they Ivy Nile gets back out before the ref turns around, and I thought, okay, that was pretty good. Let's see, there was another point where they really didn't want Rey Mysterio to be able to make the tag. No, was it Rey? No, it was Zelina Vega. They really didn't want Zelina Vega to make the tag. Yeah. And she had kicked Ivy Nile, I want to say, out of I think onto the ring floor. And Chad Gable jumps in there and grabs Ivy Nile's foot and doesn't hit her or anything. He's just holding on to her. But man, the crowd booed so much for him putting hands on Zelina.
Oh my god, they didn't like that.
They were super upsetting.
They did not like it at all. And that's all he did. All he did was grab her little foot, and they were like,
Yeah, but I do think she ended up turning it around with and I want to say she enziguri'd him into space, and then made the tag to Rey, and Rey started whooping that ass. And I want to say there was another like really good move. There was, I think it was an assisted Frankensteiner where they put Chad Gable up in one corner, and then Rey had Zelina run from the opposite corner, and he popped her up, and she landed, with her legs around Chad Gable's head, and then Frankensteiner the life out of him.
Yeah.
That was pretty excellent. I want to say there was a point where Gable caught Rey Mysterio, I want to say, and like flipped him around, like had him kind of in a running power slam position, but flipped him around so that he was face up instead of face down. and drilled him with that cliffhanger DDT that he likes to do. And let's see. As we headed towards the end of the match, um, Gable, I think, throws Ray at the ropes, and Ray stops, and Gable takes out running towards him, I think. And Rey Mysterio dropped kicked Chad Gable in the knee in such a way that just looked ferocious. And that
Yeah.
set Gable up on the middle rope, whereupon Mysterio hit a fantastic 619 and then connected with the springboard splash to pick up the victory. And
Yeah.
and there you go. The Latino World Order picks up the win on this mixed tag match. And then after the match, the Creed
Yeah.
brothers, huh?
Oh, yeah, no, I was just saying, yeah, because things get weird.
Yeah, the Creed brothers get back in the ring, and Gable seems like they show up. They hadn't been out there, and so they show up in the ring, and they're picking Chad Gable up, and he gets all mad at them and like slaps Julius across the face twice. And I'm like, oh man, this is where the Creed brothers are going to kick the life out of Chad Gable, but they didn't. Instead, they start pushing one another, and they get super hype. And Chad Gable was like, "Yes, this is what I was looking for. This is the kind of hype." And so
Huh?
somehow they end up standing in the ring with their hands all up in the air like they won. And at one point, Chad even said, "Do I look like a loser?" And we're like, "Yeah, dude, because you
Yeah, you
lost."
just lost, bro.
But okay. So a little
Brr.
bit of a bizarre little spot there with American Made and their sadomasochism, but
Yeah, I
nonetheless
mean,
a
it was just
fantastic mixed tag.
yes, but so weird. Like, what are you doing?
Yeah,
Do we
so
need to
I
step
don't know.
out? Do we need
They're
to turn
leaning
our?
they're leaning into the dysfunction.
Yeah, let's. Do we need to look away? You guys need a moment. What do we need to do to facilitate this situation and let's have it go by quickly?
Exactly. Um so after that match, we are shown a scene in the back of the Judgment Day's clubhouse. And you've got Liv Morgan and Raquel sort of arriving, and Finn steps up, and Finn's telling Liv, that it seems like she's got a lot on her plate with all of the women, and he says, "Is it okay, if I, kind of take the leadership spot?" And Liv's like, "Oh, do you mind?" And he's like, "No, I got this." And so
Not there were no leaders, but I don't know.
yeah, I guess that's fallen to the wayside because he just asked permission from, I guess, the leader in Liv Morgan to be the leader for the night and
Yeah,
call the plays. So
So, brr.
he turns around and tells Dominic Mysterio he's the man, although I feel like it's half sarcastic, but maybe not. And he encourages him and Carlito, since they're going to go against the War Raiders, to try and soften them up for Finn and JD McDonough, as they're the number one contenders for their belts. And I think Finn gives them some advice about going for the neck, because both of those men have had neck injuries in the War Raiders, Eric and Ivar.
Yeah.
And he says that's a good way to possibly beat them, or you could just piss them off and they kick your ass. And then says, well, show them what the Judgment Day are all about. And that ends the segment with the Judgment Day.
Mm-hmm.
And then we kind of get a recap of last week when Damian Priest was confronting Gunter. And it sort of goes into the fact that Ludwig Kaiser came out there and kind of spoke up on behalf of the ring general. And that leads to a backstage segment where Gunter comes up. It starts looking at Ludwig Kaiser, but then Gunter comes up to him in the backstage area. And Gunter says he doesn't want Ludwig to speak for him. And Ludwig starts to protest, but then he says, no, it's not what you think. I need you to speak for yourself. I need you to make a name for yourself. From now on, you should stand on your own and follow your own path. And he asked Ludwig if he, still sees the ring general when he looks in his eyes, which I was like, but Ludwig assures the ring general that he just sees the same, terrifying ring general that he's always seen. And Gunter says that Damian Priest can't get under his skin. And they kind of do a fist bump, and Ludwig walks off with Gunter sort of looking really worried after looking so confident talking to Ludwig. But then he turns, and the camera sort of pans to where his eye line is going, and he sees Damian Priest, I think, signing autographs or something. He's sitting at a table doing something.
I think he is signing autographs, yeah.
Signing autographs? So Gunter proceeds to try and attack Damian Priest by rolling up behind him and putting him in a sleeper. But Damian's able to kind of get out of it, and then it looks like Gunter tries to grab a piece of pipe and attack Priest, and Priest looks like he kicked the crap out of him, but for as long as Gunter was down, I'm inclined to think Priest like low blowed him with a kick. And then when Gunter's on the ground, like trying to make sense of his life and whine and just kind of be like, Damian Priest sits back down in the chair he was sitting in when he was signing autographs, looming over the top of Gunter. And he says, Gunter, you might be a general in that ring, but in the streets, I'm a king. And then Adam Pearce shows up, and Priest stands up and puts his hands up. He's like, hey, we were just talking or something like that. No, he says Gunter may need some ice, though. And Pearce just sort of looks at the situation while Priest exits stage left, and Gunter's on the ground wincing. A pretty good, solid scene, and it's really telegraphing like that Damian Priest is coming off extremely dominant, and I'm here for it.
I'm here for it. I am interested to see where it leads. Is he gonna have a dominant run here for this entire little rivalry, or just for this little segment, or what is Gunther gonna nut up, or is he gonna where are we going with this? I am very interested.
Might have difficulty nutting up after that low blow.
Oh man, true.
Well,
true.
But I do seem to recall when we were looking at it, I suggested that perhaps they're setting up Damian Priest for a more legitimate title run where he is dominant, because when he did get the belt, there was an asterisk all over the whole thing, right? Like he didn't so much beat somebody as cash in Money in the Bank, right? So there's that. And I don't think that's a big deal, but when you add in everything else, like during his title defenses, he kept relying on Judgment Day, or Judgment Day's interference more or less would help him win those matches. And then, he sort of lost to Gunter because he was attacked by Finn Balor. So he didn't really have a dominant championship run, so to speak. And so maybe this is their way of making it up so that Damian Priest looks as dominant as we all know he can be.
Yeah. Well, let's see where it goes. I'm very excited to see where they end up with this.
Oh, and then we had a really fun next segment. Would you like to do the honors?
Then The Miz and Karrion Kross give me the promo that I have been waiting for when it comes to Karrion Kross. The Miz is always The Miz, and he's never better than when he's a heel. He's the closest thing that WWE has to an MJF, and he is never gonna go as over the deep end as MJF, but he's the closest thing that they got here. So he's always a delight to see when he's a heel. And I'll just leave it at that. And he starts with his, it's been, an emotional couple of weeks. And he comments about how, looking back, he can honestly say, I truly hope the Academy saw that performance. And while he's talking, there are clips of basically the story that has been taking place between the Miz and the Wyatt Six, where they kidnapped him and he's supposed to be a reformed man, and all of that, all the way up until the point where the Miz comes up behind them and hits hits which
Eric
one did he
Rowan.
hit? Eric Rowan in the back with a chair. They're showing you segments of that, of basically the conflict, and he talked about how he deserves an Oscar. Um, uh, Bleed. He talked about how he bled, how he's bleeding for the art. Because honestly, the blood on the corner of the eye was just a wonderful
Chef's
accidental
kiss.
chef's kiss. Yeah, it just looked amazing. And he basically says that he did all of this because he was trying to convince those freaks, being the White Six, that they can change him. And he's like, me? You know? ¿Por qué? Um, and then
Yep,
Carrion
they can't
chimes
change
in.
him.
Yeah. And then Kieran chimes in, and he says, and I do what I've always done. I show the world the truth. And the truth is, the Wyatts are a bunch of wounded people using others just to make themselves feel better. I have to say what he said because it was such a wonderful piece of promo, man. It was just so good. And then he points out that the Wyatts are not invincible. The Miz, this entire time, he's gone on. He's in his own head now, talking about talking about this being a jump start for Marine 7. It's what was needed. Marine 7, Jack Carter lives, and then he names all the directors that he thinks should
Yeah.
direct it. He starts with Scorsese, and he ends with Quentin Tarantino's last film. Um,
Hmm.
Carrion continues with his bit, an eye for an eye, I'm not afraid of you, and you will continue to play the game that I control. And he ends with his classic TikTok, which meant nothing until now. Um,
Yeah, this was a
yeah.
fantastic promo for both the Miz and Karrion Cross.
Mm-hmm.
Karrion looking menacing and coherent is way better. Like he's playing 4D chess with these people now.
Yeah.
And that's what I needed for his character, because like the very confused TikTok, and then talking a whole bunch of gibberish, like leave that for John Moxley.
Yeah.
You stay coherent and focused and act like you are playing like 5 steps ahead of anybody who's trying to give you any grief. That's the guy. That's the dude that we need out of Karrion Cross in the Final Testament.
Yeah. I agree. Great promo. It looked good. The Miz looked better than he's looked in a minute. Uh, yeah. So
Yeah, and
I can't wait to see where this goes.
yeah, me too. And I fully agree with you. The Miz is never better than when he's full on heel. Oh
Yeah.
man, it's so good.
Mm-hmm.
Um, I mean, the funny parts, the funny stuff is good too. I laughed like everybody else did with Miz and R-Truth. But if we're gonna take Miz seriously, we have to have him as a heel. He's so good when he wants to be
Yeah.
that guy.
Yeah, and he had no choice but to play the straight man when it came to R-Truth. And I'm not knocking R-Truth at all, but you have to. It's kind of like Jerry Lewis and Dean Martin. Like, not both of them. Both of them can't be insane. One of them has to be the comedy relief, and the other one has to set up the segment, has to set up the jokes, has to set up the one-liners. And that was the Miz. And while that's great and Miz can do it just fine, that doesn't give us much of an opportunity to see Miz. But when he's a heel, I feel like that's honestly his natural habitat. And I'm not saying that my man's like evil in real life. I'm just saying some of us are, for the empire. That's all I'm saying. And
Hey, some guys are made for it. Like, I
yeah.
mean, Roman Reigns is a good example. They tried to make him a babyface forever, and it just wasn't
Mm-mm.
working. But as the tribal chief, he is on another level.
Yeah.
Um, Same thing with the Miz here. This Miz, the like Darth Miz, is the guy I can
Hmm.
believe is a Triple Crown champion, and
Yep.
Darth Miz is a guy I can believe who beats like The Rock and John Cena. So I'm here for it, and
Hmm.
this sets up a fantastic battle between the Final Testament and the Wyatt Six. Oh, I'm so here for it.
Yeah. And hopefully, I don't know, man. Maybe we'll get that. Maybe we'll get something like that at War Games.
Mayhaps. It
Be a
depends
lot
on
of
how much they want to pack into War Games, because you've
yeah,
already got like
exactly.
a men's and a women's War Games match, and those are not short matches. But we
Yeah.
shall see. I mean, I'm interested no matter which way they go with that.
Mm-hmm.
And that leads us into our second match, which is for the WWE Intercontinental Championship. And we have Braun Breaker, the defending champion, in his first title defense since he won it back off of Jey Uso, versus the Great White, the Celtic Warrior, Sheamus. And man, before anyone's intros even fired off, this match, I just knew it was going to be one that I really want to see.
Yeah.
Because Braun Breaker and Sheamus both wrestle in the super power slobber knocker style that I am just a huge fan of. And
Yep.
these two dudes are just like, if you're looking for like the meat match, this is it.
Yeah. Mad meat.
And the match itself,
meaty.
mad meaty. The match itself didn't disappoint, not one little bit. Sheamus was bringing it. Breaker was bringing it. There was a fantastic series of moves, particularly out of Braun Breaker. I mean, the first part of the match is them just beating the hell out of each other. And then I want to say Breaker drills Sheamus with like this fantastic, like Northern Lights. It would, for anyone else, I would say it's a Northern Lights suplex, but the way Braun Breaker threw it, it was almost like a Northern Lights backdrop. Like he yeeted Sheamus over his shoulder and was like,
yes.
holla.
Yeah.
And I want to say Breaker then drove Sheamus face first into the top turnbuckle pad, and Sheamus kind of exited out the ring and was kind of leaning up against the announce table, which set up Breaker to do the flying lariat off the apron onto the announce table, where both men just end up on the other side of the announce table, like obliterated to death by the chairs.
Yeah.
And then when we come back, Breaker has taken complete control of the match. And Breaker threw a move I haven't seen in a minute, and it looked disgusting, like in a good way. Like it looked like Sheamus got split in half. Breaker threw him against the ropes and hit him with a kitchen sink, and I just don't see that done that often anymore. And I mean, Sheamus fully flipped and was like, "Yeet."
Yeah.
And then let's see. I want to say Sheamus got back into the ring and started like, wailing on Breaker with like some body shots and some forearm shivers. But Breaker was like jumping knee. Like he was all like tiger knee for anyone with a Street Fighter reference. Because I mean, this knee, it comes nearly out of nowhere. Like he doesn't need a running start for it. He just jumps like 3 feet in the air and jacks you in the jaw with his knee. Breaker's agility is noteworthy. They talk about his speed a lot, but man, the guy has ups as well.
Yeah.
And there was this one move that he did, and I'm not entirely sure if it was trying for like a senton off the top rope or a swanton dive, but there's a point where Sheamus is standing outside the ring and Breaker gets to the top rope and basically does what looks, for all intents and purposes, like a swanton or a senton. And I don't know that Sheamus caught all of it or not, because it looked to me almost like Sheamus turned it into a neck breaker for Braun Breaker, because he grabbed kind of just his head and then like held, like almost forced him into the ground harder. It looked like it was a pretty brutal bump for Breaker to take.
I was like, damn, he big mad at you.
He must have been big mad, because he managed to get to his feet before Sheamus did and threw Sheamus in the ring while he's smiling. And I'm like, geez Louise. I mean, what are you going to be able to do to him, Sheamus, when he can dive from the top rope and just basically do a backflop into the floor? And like what move do you have that's going to simulate that?
Yeah.
So, like, Sheamus and him get back in the ring, and Sheamus is being defiant on his knees, which is a weird place to be defiant from, honestly. and Breaker's
Yeah.
slapping him in the face and talking smack to him, and that eventually pisses Sheamus off, and so he starts, punching his way out of it. And
Like, and a good way to like get stay out of a situation like that is to not get yourself into one. Maybe don't
yeah,
encourage him to punch you while you're on the ground. Like, maybe stand up first. You know what? I'm not going to tell you how to do you. I'm just saying, just a suggestion. Maybe you stand. That's all.
yep. And from there, there's some exchanges, and Sheamus responds by throwing Breaker towards the ropes and grabbing him up with a tilt-a-whirl power slam. And it was very nice looking. And then Sheamus hits with a couple of Polish hammers, and that's worth noting because I can't think of too many people that still use like a Polish hammer, and so Sheamus does that. So it's like that's at least a couple of like kind of older school moves that are making a show
Yeah.
up here. Um, and let's see, there was a point where Sheamus was, I think, recovering, and Braun was in the corner looking to go for a spear. And I think he charged full blast, right? And they make a big deal out of the fact that Breaker runs like 23 miles an hour when he's hitting the ropes. So when
Yeah.
he's running for the spear, he's doing it full speed, and Sheamus like hits him with a running knee strike. And I'm like, oh, you've answered my question about what you could potentially hit Braun Breaker with, and that is Braun Breaker running at top speed into your knee.
Yeah.
And this looked like this is gonna be it. I'm like, Breaker's done. Nope, just a 2 count. You psychopath. So then Sheamus is out on the apron, I think is how we ended up there for some reason. And Sheamus like Breaker goes for a clothesline and Sheamus ducks it, but then he wraps Breaker's arm around the rope. So Sheamus is on the outside apron and Breaker's inside the ring, but Sheamus then delivers the 10 beats of the Bodhrán to Breaker.
And you think again, and it looks bad. It looks brutal. But he never gets anybody with that move, right? So, so you're not you're happy to see it, right? You're like happy to see it, but he never really gets anybody with the move. I don't even think that he's attempting to get anybody with the move. But the crowd goes crazy because he's doing 10 beats of the Bodhrán, and I think after that he went in with a short arm clothesline.
Yeah, just to knock Breaker down a bit.
Yeah.
And then he rolled up to the top rope for a King Kong knee drop.
Yep.
And after that, he gets Breaker kind of back on his feet, but into the corner and up on the top. Actually, let me think about this. No, I think Breaker actually put Sheamus on the top rope out of that. And then climbs up there, and Sheamus grabs him up into the position for white noise, and I want to say he hits white noise.
I don't think he hit white noise.
I could have swore that he did.
Did
He got him up there for it, and then dropped down. And it was a different position because usually Sheamus is on the inside and the opponent is the one sitting on the ropes. But in this situation, he ended up lifting Breaker, and so Breaker is like facing out towards the crowd, and Sheamus is facing in towards the ring. So he only did like kind of a short jump off the middle rope with Breaker coming down like towards the corner. And it got a 2 count with the avalanche white noise. And let's see. And then they start trading blows back and forth. And Breaker puts Sheamus back up in the corner again. And I think initially he looked like he was trying to go for maybe a superplex, and Sheamus pushed him down, and then he runs up the ropes and hits the Super Frankensteiner.
Yeah, we were waiting for him to do it. We just kept going. All right, here it comes. Nope. Oh, no. All right.
Yep. And after the Super Frankensteiner, actually, um, this is the part where Breaker was attempting to go for the spear, but Sheamus countered with the pump knee strike for a 2 count. And then Sheamus, after that, sets up for the brogue kick, but Breaker then counters with the spear. But Sheamus, he wasn't able to get a cover on Sheamus before Sheamus rolled out of the ring over by the ring steps. And Breaker, seeing that he's near the ring steps, hops out of the ring to set up for the wraparound super spear. And he takes out running and he passes the first corner. And then out of nowhere, he gets obliterated with like a super high speed clothesline from Ludwig Kaiser.
Yep.
And that immediately forces the disqualification. And Ludwig then picks up Breaker, kind of smacks him around and hits him in the ring post. And then he connects with the twisting DDT, which he's using as a finisher, on the floor to Breaker. So he has annihilated Breaker at this point. And then he sees that Sheamus is still kind of leaned up against the ring steps. So Kaiser takes out running and absolutely plows Sheamus with the wraparound drop kick against the steel steps, and then climbs up on top of the steps and poses and kind of squats down and tells Sheamus, you know, I told you we wouldn't ever be finished until you were done for good, and then continues to pose some more. So he apparently took the ring general's advice to heart and decided it was time for him to make some waves in the division. And
He was
boy,
like,
howdy
"That's
did
right.
he.
I gotta follow my bliss."
Yeah, real talk. And any other time, I would have been so annoyed that a match like this got interrupted. But it was so badass the way Kaiser obliterated Braun Breaker as he was running around for the wraparound super spear.
Yeah.
And then just totally took out, like, because these are two like super big dudes, and Kaiser
Yep.
is kind of a skinny dude, and he annihilated them both. And
Yep.
on top of that, it was late in the match, so we had already gotten a really good match out of Sheamus and Braun Breaker, so I didn't feel too bad about this. And I kind of think we might end up with a fatal, like a triple threat match between Braun Breaker, Sheamus, and Ludwig Kaiser going forward, because he
I hope
totally
so.
messed with Breaker. Like, he didn't just screw Sheamus, he obliterated Breaker, and I don't think Breaker's going to let that slide.
I really hope so. They were very, very upset about it, and I was giddy as shit.
Oh yeah, the crowd was so pissed off. They were like, Kaiser, you suck. You know, that was the chant.
And I'm like, no, he does not. It was perfect. He's a nice man.
It was probably the coolest, most badass thing I've seen Ludwig Kaiser ever do, ever.
Yeah.
And so I am, to use the phrase, and run it into the ground, I'm here for it. Because I think it's great. Like, this is a fantastic way to pull Kaiser up into like the upper mid card easily.
Yeah.
And that sets him up to go after things like the is it the Intercontinental over there or the US? I think it's the Intercontinental Championship. As he is doing with Braun Breaker.
Yeah. And it looks good, and I'm ready. Let's go.
Yep. And speaking of the Intercontinental Championship, just to be clear, Braun Breaker retains because it was DQ'd. So he still remains the WWE Intercontinental Champion. And then we get a pretty cool segment in the back with the Bloodline. Would you like to take this one?
Yes. The OG Bloodline, they're there, and that's everybody excluding Roman, and by OG including Sammy. Okay, guys are with me. Great.
Sammy
they walk up to Seth Rollins in the backstage area, and they picked the right person to talk. They picked Jay. And he basically cut a fantastic promo uh, about how they all have their differences with the OTC, and Sammy reminds Seth that he decided to put his differences to the side with Cody Rhodes during last year's War Games match, and he was asking Seth to do the same thing this year with Roman Reigns, and which I hadn't even thought about that, but that was a really great angle
That was a
to
great
throw
point.
out
Yep.
there. Yeah, great point. And Seth says that he would stand side by side with the Usos and Sami Zayn any day of the week, but he can't with Roman Reigns. And he said it hurts Seth because he would love to get in the cage and destroy Bronson Reed, but it's not worth it. And he understands where the OG bloodline is coming from, but it's not worth dealing with Roman being a tyrant with control again. And then he told me he was going to head out there and drop Bronson, and that way he wouldn't have to. He'd never make it to War Games. Uh, and then he wished them. Actually, he didn't wish them good. Like he just told them that was the OG Bloodline's problem, not his, and he was out. And that was. I thought this was really good, and they both made really excellent points, which is very, very freaking rare, especially in a wrestling storyline. So,
Yeah, I agree. I thought it was really cool that Sammy made the point logically that Seth was willing to put his differences aside with Cody Rhodes, who he had more heat with than anyone at that moment in time,
yeah,
and that he was just asking him to do the same here, like again. And Seth made the point of stating, look, I totally get it. I understand. I know where you're coming from. And I would gladly get in that ring with you, Sammy, or you, Jay, or you, Jimmy. But I absolutely cannot get behind helping Roman Reigns get back into power. And honestly,
yeah,
he told him, you should really consider that. I'm surprised any of you are willing to do that. But that's on you. And so, yeah, there at the end, he was like, look, whatever happens at War Games with the Bloodline, that's the OG Bloodline's problem, not his.
yeah.
He's out.
I
He's
mean,
not going to let that be on his head that, after everything he's been through, he is not going to help Roman Reigns get into power.
yeah, great little segment there with really good, coherent points, and both sides giving their argument, delivering their argument very well.
Yeah. Yeah. And you're right. Usually in pro wrestling, like they don't really walk you through that rationale that deeply. They're like,
Yeah,
my history with Roman and why I can't do this, and that'd be it, right? This
yeah,
was them going the distance to like play this out so it makes sense. And I
yeah.
was here for it.
Yep, yep. Yeah, it was really, really good. Um, uh, right after that, we had a Dakota Kai vignette, and she basically talked about how she is ready and she's hungry and she is ready to show and not just tell. Um,
Yep. And
and at
how
this point, oh, go ahead, go ahead.
Oh, I didn't mean to cut you off. I'm sorry. I just
Please.
wanted to accentuate the point that she's attempting to acknowledge the fact that she's been on the shelf like a fair bit of time head on.
Yeah,
And she's
yeah,
talking about how, after being out for 4 months, you start to doubt yourself. People start to doubt you. That, they see me smiling back here and they think, is she really serious? And she goes on to assure everyone that she loves this. She's never been more serious and she's ready to show up and show out. And I
hmm
was like, okay, Dakota,
yeah,
good, because that's been my concern. I think I mentioned it when she made her initial comeback. Um, I think it wasn't on SmackDown, and I think it was on SmackDown. But if not, it was one of the last episodes where she first returned to the to Damage Control, and I was
yeah,
like, well, you kind of are the weak link in Damage Control outside of the fact that you can cut promos in English, because like you seem like, because it seems like since she came back with Io Sky and Bailey, shoot, what was it? Almost 2 years ago now at WrestleMania,
Yeah.
when it was Bianca Belair versus Becky Lynch for the women's world title, and they
Mm,
made their big show up. I feel like Dakota Kai has had the least amount of time in the ring and the most amount of time on the shelf with injuries. So,
yeah.
and I mean, I get that those things happen. I really do. But in the interim, like Asuka and Io and Bailey and Kairi Sane have been putting in that work for damage control. So, unfortunately, that makes you the weak link. So, if you're going to show out, now's the time.
Yeah. I agree. Like you got literally nothing to lose at this point. Just go for balls to the wall, man.
Yeah, so it is my hope, because I'm not wishing for her to fail here. It is my hope that she can perform well in ring and that she can stay healthy and off the shelf.
Yeah.
So good luck, Dakota.
Indeed.
But that brings us to our third match of the night, the War Raiders versus Dominic Mysterio and Carlito. And I always have high hopes when the Viking Raiders or the War Raiders, whatever you want to call them, the War Raiders, come to the ring, because they usually deliver. However, on the opposite side of that is Dominic Mysterio and Carlito. So I was like, how's this going to look? Dominic Mysterio actually kind of stepped up. He was looking good, and Carlito was there to take bumps. But Eric and Ivar are looking sharper than they ever
Yeah,
have.
buddy. They
Man,
look brutal.
Eric was looking good, and I don't mean to sound like, he's chopped liver here, but I am constantly and consistently blown away with how Ivar at 350 build pounds moves in that ring.
Yeah.
Like, he is way more nimble and spry than he should be, and it is insane. Like, I know they say that about, like, at that size he shouldn't move this way, but at Ivar's size he really shouldn't. And so he's one of the guys where I actually believe that when they say that.
Yeah.
Like, I can believe that, like, your Braun Breaker can move the way he does. Like, he's got a very, like, athletic build. He's not so muscle bound. But, like, a guy like Ivar, who's just a massive dude, moving as well as he does, like, he's dancing around like other guys in his category, including, like, Big Bronson Reed, who moves very well too. But Ivar's doing cartwheels and shit,
Yeah.
So it's like, wow. But yeah, both Eric and Ivar pretty much run a clinic on Dominic and Carlito, and there was this really great section where Dominic was just getting it handed to him by Ivar. I loved it.
Yeah.
There was a point where Ivar, let's see, it was really good. So I want to make sure I get it right. There was a point where Ivar hit like a let's see. Ivar and Mysterio get tagged in, and this is near the end of the match, and Ivar hits him with this like 9 million feet in the air back body drop. And then Ivar catches him with a sidewalk slam, and it was a nice looking one. Like, it was different than a typical like sidewalk slam, like, because he went all the way down with it. And as opposed to a sitting position, he ended up laying flat with it, which made it look a little more brutal, in my opinion. And then he followed that up with a running cross body splash that just looks like it flattened, like it steamrollered Mysterio.
Yeah.
And Mysterio kind of gets over into the turnbuckles, and Ivar Ivar runs at him, and Mysterio sidesteps, putting Ivar in the corner. And then Mysterio attempted to run at him, and Ivar kind of lifted his legs up and hit him with that sort of seated senton that he does when somebody runs at him in the corner. So now we're dealing with Mysterio having been flattened like on 3 separate occasions by Ivar. It's just like, man. And then Ivar I think Carlito came in to try and intercede, and Ivar cartwheeled around Carlito as Carlito came running at him. And then he clotheslines Carlito and goes to the opposite corner and runs and hits like this 18 megaton Bronco Buster on Mysterio. So Mysterio has been pounded into a nice, flat, tiny, quick cooking crust at this point,
Yeah.
but somehow manages to kick out after a 2 count.
Mm-hmm.
So after that, I want to say Mysterio drove Ivar kind of into the middle turnbuckle pad and then stomps on Ivar, like on his chest.
Yeah.
And then Mysterio runs over and tags in Carlito, and Ivar ends up sending Mysterio crashing into Carlito. So he hit a dude with another dude.
He did.
And then he goes and he tags in Eric, and they hit this massive assisted power slam. Like basically, they popped Carlito up in the air and then power slammed the life out of him.
Yeah.
And then they turned their they slammed him into the mat, and Carlito rolls out of the ring. And so they turn their attention back to Dominic Mysterio, and they connect with the War Machine. Which, to describe what War Machine is, Eric gets behind like Dominic and kind of lifts him up so that he's elevated a bit, almost like I would say like if you were getting somebody in a full Nelson lift, but it's not quite that because he was holding him kind of around the middle, but he's elevated off the ground and like a foot or so above Ivar. Or, I'm sorry, above Eric. And then Ivar runs to the middle rope and then turns around and does a springboard clothesline. And like Mysterio just comes crashing to the ground with what looks like Eric kind of suplexing him into the ground, and then Eric rolls that into a pin, and that's 1, 2, 3 for the War Raiders.
Yep.
But it doesn't stop there.
It does not.
I wish it did. I wish it stopped right there. But while the War Raiders are celebrating their hard-fought win, Finn Balor and JD McDonough rush in after the match and jump them both and start attacking their necks, kind of like based on the advice that Finn gave earlier and the fact that both of these men have had neck injuries. And I want to say JD McDonough hits, I think it was Eric, with a massive twisting kind of like almost a Ravishing Rick Rude style neck breaker.
Yeah.
Like a hangman neck breaker. It looked real
good
nasty.
Recall, by the way. Yeah.
And thank you. And Finn Balor, of course, gets up top and delivers the coup de grace. And so we end up with, even though the War Raiders fought a hard match and won, we end up with the Judgment Day, and Carlito and Dominique jump back in the ring now that the War Raiders have been dealt with. And so you have all 4 of these members of Judgment Day holding their hands up high. So they're trying to build some nice heat. I do think this was good because we need what's left of the Judgment Day to look strong. Even though they were dumping them after the match, it was still a pretty good beatdown. And I don't know which way it's going to go for the War Raiders here when they challenge with their upcoming championship match against Finn Balor and JD McDonough. I honestly think that the War Raiders could, like, you know, I know it's booked. I know it's kayfabe, but like just looking at these two teams, how they stack up, it looks to me like the War Raiders could absolutely demolish Finn Balor and JD McDonough. So
yeah,
I think the Judgment Day is definitely going to have to rely on superior numbers to counteract the like 800 pounds of death that is the War Raiders coming their way.
Yeah.
But all in all, a really good match. I enjoyed that match a lot more than I thought I would, considering it's Dominic Mysterio and Carlito.
True. Yep. Me too. And for all the reasons that you just stated. Nothing against Dominic, everything against Carlito.
Yeah.
You know, just wasn't expecting it to be as big of a banger as it was.
Yeah, and it was largely a banger. I mean, not that Mysterio didn't get some of his little offense off, but it was largely a banger because of the offense and the absolute demolition derby that is the War Raiders. Ivar in particular.
Yeah, yeah, totes agree.
But
Um,
after that match, as the Judgment Day have their hands all up in the air, something funny happened to the screen. Would you care to discuss that?
yeah, it went all wonky, and then it kind of besought it. Uh, and it kind of went back to 1994. Became VHS, and then Uncle Howdy's little face was on the screen, and he basically cut a promo, a rebuttal to the one that the Miz and uh Karrion Cross cut earlier in the evening. I don't know verbatim what he said, but there was a lot of you're gonna pay for what you've done, and I never wanted this. Um, you're never gonna be the same. You brought this on yourself. Completely talking to the Miz, of course.
Yep. And you're responsible for what happens next. He did have a
Yeah,
cool line about like the naivety of the innocent is the favored tool of the liar. And I was like, ooh, snap.
yeah, yeah. So he doesn't seem very happy about what Miz done did.
No,
Um,
and he portrayed fully on like super crazy, like Hannibal Lecter. Miz and
yeah,
Carrion should be worried
yeah. Manson, lampshades the whole fucking time.
the whole time,
Yeah,
behind scraggly hair and looking completely unhinged.
yeah. Looking like a prettier pack. um, and after that, we cut to backstage again, where Kofi Kingston is walking up to, who is he talking? Alpha Academy.
Alpha
Uh
Academy, they actually walked up to him.
oh, okay. They walked up to him. That's right. And Maxine asked him how things were going with him and Xavier.
Yep, because the
Um,
10-year anniversary is coming up.
yeah, and they were congratulating Kofi for that. Um, Kofi was about to get into it, but like the last time, Xavier came out of nowhere and basically started addressing things with him. Right in front of Alpha Academy. And I remember
Hmm.
thinking to myself, like, could you not just pull your man to the side with this, or this has to be right here? Okay, but there was a
Yeah.
reason for that. I think WWE was thinking that maybe Xavier's heel turn wasn't obvious enough. Like people were still cheering it, because they do. New Day's music pops on and they're singing and they're dancing, and even if he's the one in the ring, they'll bust out with the New Day rocks. I mean, so maybe the audience is just confused, or maybe they just always see New Day as faces, and that's just all there is to it. I don't know, but Xavier intends to push that button and find out what happens. Um,
Yeah, it was interesting here because when Xavier first came up, he's like, Kofi, man, we got to
yeah,
talk. 10 years is coming up, and for that entire time, we've coexisted as a great tag, like the greatest tag team with almost no arguments. And now, like, it seems like we can't not bicker with one another. And I just can't get what Karrion Cross said out of my head. And Kofi's like, you're still worrying about what he said to you? And so it looks like initially Xavier Woods is trying to be reasonable here and is actually
yeah.
almost kind of like, what is happening? But then
Hmm.
it's almost like the spell takes hold again because Darth Xavier ends up coming out And I think it was
Yeah.
when I think Otis wanted to say something because they were starting to bicker again, and he tried to intercede, and Xavier was just brutal to him, like really
Yeah.
mean to Alpha Academy. He was like, "And what in the hell could you losers say to the greatest tag team in WWE history? I see why Chad Gable dropped you guys." And went on to say, the New Day will be taking on the Alpha Academy next week, and that will get us back on track to where we need to be. And so Xavier went from being relatively reasonable and sounding like he might want to work it out to suddenly
Yeah.
crazy. So it's like carrying cross is like the devil in somebody's ear, and it just like it's almost like a spell the way it was portrayed here with Xavier Woods.
Yep. Yep. Very insane. Like, I mean, this was a 0 to 100 situation.
Yeah. And as you pointed out, like I think it wasn't clear to everybody enough who's in the wrong here because in our last podcast about this, we said, it looks a little too even handed. Like Xavier Woods made a deal with Kofi that Kofi would let him be the quarterback, and then Kofi has resisted everything he tried to suggest. So it kind of looks like they're just having a falling out. Well, this made
Yeah.
it absolutely clear that Xavier is possessed by Satan and that he's the bad guy in this, like
Yeah.
for
Yeah.
sure,
Yeah.
no doubt.
Yeah.
Because like picking on Alpha Academy that way is akin to the bad guy putting on golf shoes and stepping on puppies.
Yep.
So like they wanted it to be like irrefutably clear that Xavier is the bad apple here.
Yeah.
And that brings us to the fourth and final match of the night, the main event. Seth Rollins versus Big Bronson Reed
Yeah.
in the rematch.
That we all needed and didn't even know we needed. But we did need it.
Yeah. And in this match, I thought perhaps the new bloodline, Solo Sikoa's bloodline, might interfere. Well, they made
Mhm.
sure that you knew that was going to happen right away because the bloodline immediately arrives and starts
Yeah.
circling the ring. And it's everybody but Solo. It's Jacob, Tamatonga, and Tongaloa, and Mickey Potato. No, I think that's all of them, right? It's those three.
I think so. Yeah.
And Big Bronson Reed is obviously in the ring with Seth Rollins, and the bell has rung, but the camera is completely focused on the bloodline outside. And shortly after their arrival, and looking like they were going to interfere with this match, Jey Uso's music hits. So we had an amazing situation where, since Big Bronson Reed had come out first, we had just finished listening to Seth Rollins' entrance, and the crowd was singing with him. They kept singing after the song had stopped, and now Jey Uso's music hits, and it doesn't play for very long, just long enough for the Usos and Sami Zayn to rush out there and start beating the crap out of the bloodline. But as you pointed out, the crowd is continuing to sing Jey Uso's
Yes.
song. So they went from singing Rollins to singing Uso, and I'm like, oh man, Christmas.
Yeah. I thought it was
And
really cool too.
it was very, very cool. Like Grand Rapids was in a singing mood.
Yeah.
And pretty much in short order, the OG bloodline, their three members have run off the three members of the new bloodline. Like they beat them. I want to say Jimmy and Jay ended up having a super kick party against Jacob up against the barricade. And when they both went for the double super kick, they knocked him over the barricade and then proceeded to chase him out of the arena. And I guess Sammy, Tamatonga, and Tongaloa all followed suit. So now we're brought back to the ring where Rollins and Reed are fighting. And you've got Rollins kind of attacking Bronson Reed in the corner. And let's see, this ended up being a pretty banger of a match. Wouldn't you say?
I absolutely would indeed say so.
Yeah.
Um,
So go
I,
ahead.
I always get nervous whenever I see a big guy in the ring with a smaller competitor. But Rollins ain't so small, like you pointed out while we were watching this. I think he's about 6'2".
Hmm.
He's not so small. He's got, I mean, Bronson's got maybe about 110 pounds on him or so. But Seth can still go, and he held his own here against Bronson Reed. I don't know why I was worried about it. Seth is uh
The goat.
the goat, yeah, and him and Reed work very well together. He does a great job of making Bronson look good, and Bronson does a great job of making Seth looks good, making Seth look good. He sells his finisher, and he sells his moves pretty damn well. This
Agreed.
was a treat. This was a treat to watch, and I'm actually kind of happy that the OG bloodline came out to run off the bloodline, so that was not really a factor in this
Yeah, it
match. I
was.
mean, not for quite a while, I should say.
Yeah, so we're able to get a heck of a match. I mean, this is kind of like
Yeah.
Braun Breaker versus Sheamus, right?
Hmm.
Like by the time Kaiser interfered, we'd already had a heck of a match. And here we get the bloodline, like both bloodlines kind of dealt with right at the beginning so that we are able to have a nice long match with Seth and Reed.
Yeah.
Um and I'm just going to kind of quickly run through the match because there were so many different spots that I don't think I can just pick them out. So
Hmm.
early on, Rollins dumps Reed out of the ring, and then hits a beautiful suicide dive. Like we know Rollins is good with the suicide dive, but this was a great one. And we end up with them getting back in the ring, and Rollins is doing some knife edge chops and tries to do a running attack at Reed, who just does the leaping body block that just negates other human beings. Like it's like here's a wall, enjoy, Bert. And
Yeah.
Rollins gets knocked out of the ring where he regroups, and Reed is beating on him and slams Rollins' head on the ring apron. Um, and I think Reed launches Rollins into the timekeepers area.
Hmm.
Um, and it looks like it's getting close for like a count out because by the time Rollins is able to get back in, it's at the count of 8. And Reed then like kind of jumps on top of Rollins and hits him with a ground and pound attack. And Rollins finally makes it back to his feet, and to stop Reed's aggression, hits him with a jawbreaker. And I couldn't tell. We were worrying. This is something we were wondering about when he came out because he had like one white boot and knee pad, and I was
Yeah.
like, is that just Rollins's unique sense of fashion, or is that an indicator that he's got a bum leg?
Yeah.
And so,
I I don't know. The question is yet to be answered.
well, and to hear the announcers tell it, they're like, Seth Rollins' whole entire body is injured. You know, his lower back, his ribs, his knees, his legs, his everything. Because there was a point where the announcers were just running down the list of like all of
Mhm.
Rollins' bang ups.
Yeah.
And so I'm sitting there thinking, well, if he does have a bum knee, then a jawbreaker is not a great call because he's got to dive to his knees to do that
Yeah.
one. Um, and kind of, it's funny that the kitchen sink stood out because I think Reed hit Rollins with one in this match, and then I want to say Reed then clotheslined Rollins over the top rope. And that's when Reed does his signature diving shoulder tackle off of the ring apron. And that
Hmm.
looked pretty mean. And then he throws Rollins into the steel ring steps and charges after him, and Rollins dodges, and Reed ends up eating ring steps, and he's all like, and during this time, Rollins and Reed, through all of the outside the ring stuff, are stopping periodically to jump back in the ring just to reset the count. And then Rollins comes back out and just proceeds to start bashing Reed's head into the ring steps repeatedly. And like he does it on the top of the ring steps at first, and then he throws the top of the ring steps off so that you get that like only a foot off the ground section of the ring steps, and so he's beating him down there, and it looks like he's setting him up to drill him with a stomp on the ring steps. And when he goes for the stomp, Reed actually is able to get out of the way, and so Rollins just sort of like stomps the ring steps, but then he turns around and jumps up the rings, like uses the ring steps as sort of a springboard to the apron, and from the apron he hits Reed with a springboard knee strike that was fantastic.
Yeah.
And then he proceeds to kick him in the face, and that brings Reed down to his knees, and no, wait a minute. No, I think that happened later. Rollins then hits like a thrust kick to Reed's knee to bring him kind of, to a halt. And then he runs to the ropes and comes back, and Reed just kind of grabs him up. Like, I think it was almost like a pop-up into a sit-out powerbomb that was amazeballs. Like, Reed throws such a good sit-out powerbomb.
Yeah.
And then as we are heading into, I think we had a commercial break, but then when we get back from the commercial break, Rollins is fighting off a superplex attempt by Big Bronson Reed. And he ends up going with the forehead bites on Bronson, and hits him with an enziguri. And then I want to say at some point Reed tries to get back up in the corner with Rollins, and Rollins slips under him, I want to say, and like from while Bronson is on the middle rope, he ends up getting Bronson in like for the power bomb, and I'm like, right. I'm so used to Seth Rollins doing the corner power bomb that my initial thought was, are you madman enough to try and run from one corner to the next with Big Bronson Reed all up on your shoulders like that?
Yeah,
he did not, because Rollins is great, but he's only a mere mortal man, right? But he did do a fantastic falling powerbomb with Reed out of the corner that was just awesome.
Yeah.
And I was impressed. And Rollins, I want to say, gets up and then goes for a springboard moonsault for a 1 count. And then Rollins jumps out onto the apron and hits a springboard swanton bomb. And I mean, Rollins is just looking aces here. Like, he is so good. And he attempts to go for the pedigree, but Reed blocks it. And I want to say the way Reed blocked it was Rollins got one arm in the underhook, but couldn't get the other one. And Reed stands up. And so Rollins kind of goes over the top. And it looks almost like Rollins might be trying for a sunset flip, but like Reed doesn't move. And he attempts to do a bonsai drop, and Rollins fortunately gets out of there in the nick of time, because that looks like it would have just crushed Rollins' entire head.
Yeah, that was a oh hell no situation.
Yeah, that's one of those moves where if you mess up the timing, like, somebody gonna die.
Yeah.
And then Rollins super kicks Reed and gets him back on the mat, and then he goes up to the top for a frog splash, and that looked fantastic, but it only gets a 2 count. And I remember watching, Rollins is like, Reed is such a thick dude that Rollins like has a hard time like getting on top of him, because he wants to, like, you're like rolling off,
Yeah.
And then from there, I want to say Reed drills Rollins with like this massive, like, kaiju brainbuster. Like, it was a nasty looking brainbuster, because I don't recall seeing that in Reed's typical arsenal. So this was a new hotness just for Rollins, and it looked gross. And it got a solid 2 count out of it. And then Reed goes for his running senton splash, but Rollins gets out of the way. And then Reed tries to get him up for the Death Valley driver, but he blocks that, and then proceeds to super kick Reed. and then kicks Reed in the gut, and then is actually able to pull off the pedigree, but only gets a 2 count. And at this point, Rollins is like, Jesus, what do I got to do to this freak? And Rollins then connects with the curb stomp, and realizing that Big Bronson Reed is a different kind of monster, he knows that one curb stomp ain't going to be enough. So he goes to the top rope. Like, he goes to the corner and climbs up to the top rope to prepare for a super curb stomp, because that's what worked last time. And when he gets up there, Solo Sikoa has climbed up on the announce table and is sitting there taunting Rollins and distracts him long enough for Reed to get up and grab Rollins and hit him with like this monumentally nasty looking Death Valley driver. And then off the end of the Death Valley driver, Reed hits him not just with one big senton splash as, you know, running off the ropes, but he hits it one way, gets up and hits it coming back. So Death Valley driver and 2 nasty sentons, and then Reed's able to climb up to the top and tsunami splash Seth Rollins, and 1, 2, 3, Big Bronson Reed wins by pinfall.
Yep. And this was a really great match. Seth looked good. I mean, and I keep saying it. I keep saying it because honestly, Rollins and Bronson, I'm here for it. They can have this match again if they'd like. They look really good together. And I mean, I saw slams from Rollins. I saw slams from Bronson. I was happy.
Yeah.
A happy kitten in a very warm wrestling blanket. It was fantastic.
No, I give a lot of credit to Seth Rollins too, because a big dude like Reed, I mean, sometimes it's hard to work with fellas that big, you know, and Seth Rollins didn't have any problem at all. Now, admittedly, we've seen Seth Rollins even have good matches with guys like Omos, so it doesn't surprise me in the least, but it's still worth calling out that Seth Rollins is that damn good. And Bronson Reed met him every step of the way. Bronson Reed is really shining in these moments. Like, if he wanted to be put to the top of the card, he is earning it. He is living up to the role, and I am all for it.
Yep.
Now, I kind of thought we were going to see some kind of aftermath to that, but Raw went off the air pretty much the nanosecond Big Bronson Reed's hand was raised. So we didn't get to see if like this results in Seth Rollins maybe changing his mind about War Games, you know, now that he's been fucked with by Solo Sikoa and the new bloodline, and he's going to extra especially want to murder Bronson Reed. And we didn't see if maybe the new bloodline came back to the ring to beat on Rollins some more or anything like that. Like, so many questions, but the major question left to answer tonight is, what would you rate WWE's Monday Night Raw?
Simply put, I think I would give it an 8. 8 neck nubs, which would make it top tier. It delivered on everything that it presented to me, to my eyes. Everything that I saw was good. Even Zelina Vega with Rey Mysterio, they looked good. That match, there wasn't a match that really sucked. These are all decent, good matches. Either with really good storyline or really good high points in the actual match. So, I got nothing bad to say, man. It was a really good episode, really fun.
Would you say it's top tier?
Yeah, absolutely, top tier. 8 and up is top tier, and 8 neck nubs, super top tier.
I have to agree, if not even a little more so. I think this pushed, like, every match was good. Even the ones that didn't look on paper like they were going to be good were very good. The in-ring work was good. All of the storytelling was good. Every promo was good. And some of the
Yeah.
stuff was great. Like the returning Rhea Ripley that I didn't think we were going to see. Like I really thought she was out injured.
Yep.
And, just all of it was good. I'm going to push my rating up to 9 neck nubs for this episode. It was really that good.
Respect.
So I'm going to absolutely give this episode of Monday Night Raw for November 18th a top tier rating. It was outstanding, and it did everything you wanted it to do. Not only were all of the vignettes good and interesting and furthered the stories, but the major matches for the upcoming pay-per-view are the War Games matches, and this did a great job building hype for both of those matches. Like, I was already interested in the women's match and the men's matches, right? Because that's the bloodline.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
But by adding Rhea Ripley to the mix and by potentially adding Seth Rollins at this point, I know it's not confirmed, but I mean, who the hell else if not Seth at this point after that kind of interference from the new bloodline and Bronson Reed? That's going to be one amazing set of War Games matches. And those aren't even the only hot matches on the ticket, but those are the two major ones that the pay-per-view is, all about. It's Survivor Series War Games, and both of those matches I am absolutely hyped for. And I think they did a fantastic job building heat going into their pay-per-view. So this was a fantastically well done episode, and a fantastically well done episode leading into a major pay-per-view. So, absolute kudos to Triple H and the staff and WWE. You killed it on this episode. Well done.
Yeah. Agreed.
So, with that said, I just want to take the time to thank our listeners who joined us for this episode. And I hope all of you join us for our next episode, which I believe will be our coverage of Dynamite that happens on Wednesday. And until then, I don't think there's too much left for me to do but roll the outro.
Bye, guys. Thanks for tuning in to this episode of Top Tier Wrestling. We hope you enjoyed our deep dive into the latest AEW and WWE news and shows. Don't forget to subscribe to our podcast so you never miss an episode. Follow us on social media for updates and to join the conversation. Until next time, everyone, remember, wrestling is always better when it's top tier.